All right, so ready for a deep dive into some local politics?
Always up for a little political intrigue, especially when it involves Nigeria.
Yeah, this one's got it all: intrigue, surprises, even maybe a little drama. We're talking about the recent local government elections in Rivers State.
Ah, yes, I've been following those closely. Quite the shakeup.
Definitely. So for our listener who might not have all the details at their fingertips, we're talking elections that were held on October 5th, 2024. 23 local council chairs were up for grabs in Rivers State.
And a lot of those seats went to a bit of an unexpected contender, you could say.
That's putting it mildly. The Action People's Party, APP, they completely swept the board, winning 22 out of the 23 chairmanships.
A landslide victory, and one that has a lot of people talking, especially considering the context.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so interesting. It wasn't just a win for the APP. This all went down with both of the major parties, the PDP and the APC, deciding to opt out completely. They didn't even participate.
Which, in hindsight, might have been a bit of a gamble on their part. Did they miscalculate the public sentiment? Did they underestimate the APP? It's the political equivalent of taking a rain check on a game you thought you had in the bag, only to find out you missed a major upset.
It's like they thought, this is a done deal, but somebody forgot to tell the APP that.
Exactly. And this wasn't just a matter of low voter turnout or apathy. The APP ran a really compelling campaign, one focused on local issues, grassroots empowerment, greater autonomy. They tapped into a feeling, especially among younger voters, that the established parties weren't really addressing their concerns.
So it was a perfect storm. The big players step back, and the APP seizes the moment with a message that resonates. Fascinating stuff. Now, before we declare them the undisputed champions, there's one tiny piece of the puzzle that's still a little fuzzy, right?
Ah, you're talking about Etch local government area. They still haven't announced their final results.
Right, Etch. 19 wards, a lot of ground to cover. So a delay is understandable, but with everything else that's happened, you have to wonder, is it just a matter of counting the votes, or is there something more to this?
It's like that final scene in a movie where you think the story is over, but then there's a cut to black and you hear a door creaking open.
Leaving us all hanging on the edge of our seats. Okay, so we've got this new political player making waves, one local government keeping us all in suspense. But believe me, the story doesn't end there. Remember how you love those surprising facts? Buckle up.
You've got my attention. What else happened?
So Election Day rolls around, and count them, two explosions, Rockport Harcourt.
2 explosions? That's unsettling, to say the least. Where did they happen?
One targeted the APC Secretariat.
Targeting a political party headquarters. That's not random.
Definitely not. And the other explosion hit the Obiyo-Akpor Council Secretariat.
Both directly related to the elections.
Yeah.
And you said these happened when?
The really unsettling part, early morning, before most people were even awake, let alone heading to the polls.
So a deliberate attempt to disrupt the election process, maybe even intimidate voters.
It's hard not to see it that way, especially when you add in this little tidbit. Gunshots were reported near the home of a certain prominent figure.
Someone connected to the elections, or Naysom Wake.
Naysom. But he's the minister of the Federal Capital Territory. Why is he involved in local Rivers State elections?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's like those political thrillers where nothing is as it seems. He might hold a national position now, but let's not forget, he was the governor of Rivers State.
Ah, so he still holds influence there, connections.
Exactly. Whether the gunshots were a warning, an attempt to intimidate, or just a bizarre coincidence, it adds another layer of unease to the whole thing.
It definitely raises the stakes.
And if you thought it couldn't get any stranger, wait for this. There were reports of RSIEC officials being noticeably absent. RSIEC officials, those are the folks responsible for ensuring a fair and smooth election, right?
Very same. And they were apparently MIA in several key areas.
Now, that's a big red flag. Where specifically were these officials absent?
That's the thing. Some of the places were. Let's just say they weren't random. Wake's hometown, for one. And a few other communities considered to be major players in the election.
So not just absent, but strategically absent.
You're starting to sound like one of those conspiracy bloggers, but honestly, it does make you wonder. Were voters in those areas prevented from casting their ballots? Were votes tampered with?
It casts a long shadow over the legitimacy of the election process in those areas, that's for sure.
And then there's the pre-election drama to factor in.
More drama. We've got explosions, gunshots, missing officials. What more could there be?
Remember those court orders flying around? The police initially refused to provide security for the election, citing one of them.
Wow, so you've got security concerns from the get-go.
And if that wasn't enough, INS, the Independent National Electoral Commission, they were also blocked by a court order,
What were they blocked from doing?
providing voter registers for the election.
The voter registers, that's like playing a football match without a game plan. How can you ensure a fair election without knowing who's eligible to vote?
It's a recipe for chaos, and frankly, it makes you wonder if these weren't attempts to suppress voter turnout, to skew the results.
It certainly adds another layer of doubt to an already murky situation.
So let me get this straight. We've got explosions, we've got missing officials, we've got court orders flying left and right. It's like a political thriller novel come to life. And in the middle of it all, the APP waltzes in and takes home the prize. What's the takeaway here?
It's the question everyone's asking, right? Is this a sign of a major power shift in River State or just a fluke, a blip on the radar?
Well, 22 out of 23 local governments. That's not exactly a small victory. It's like they redefine the meaning of landslide.
Exactly. And you can't ignore the message they campaigned on. Grassroots empowerment, a focus on local issues, it clearly resonated with voters, especially those who felt overlooked by the bigger parties.
Like they were tired of the same old song and dance, and the APP offered them a brand new tune. But speaking of the bigger parties, the PDP and the APC skipping out on this election entirely. That's a bold move, to say the least.
It's like they decided to sit this hand out, fold their cards, and hope for a better deal next time. But did they miscalculate?
That's what makes it so fascinating, right? Was it a miscalculation? Overconfidence? Or are they playing some kind of 4D chess we're not privy to?
Some analysts are suggesting that this was a strategic move, a way to conserve resources and avoid internal conflicts before the upcoming national elections.
So they're playing the long game, focusing on the bigger picture.
Possibly. But in the meantime, their absence created a vacuum, one that the APP was more than ready to fill.
And they filled it in a big way. But here's the thing that keeps nagging at me. Even if the APP's victory was legitimate, can they actually govern effectively? Can they build trust with the people when the whole election process has been overshadowed by so much chaos?
That's the million-dollar question. The violence, the irregularities, the missing officials, it all casts a long shadow. It undermines the very foundation of a democratic process.
And what about accountability? Will we ever find out what really happened? Will anyone be held responsible for the attempts to disrupt the election?
Those are the questions that need to be answered if people are going to have faith in the system again.
It's like someone ripped a page out of the rule book and nobody's quite sure how to play the game anymore.
It highlights the fragility of democracy, the importance of transparency and accountability.
It's a reminder that elections aren't just about who wins or loses. They're about the process itself, the right of every citizen to have their voice heard.
And that right was definitely challenged in this election.
So to our listener, we'll be watching closely as the story continues to unfold. Will the APP deliver on its promises? Will the PDP and APC re-strategize? And will River State find a way to move forward from this tumultuous election? One thing's for sure, this deep dive isn't over yet.